most people trying to raise money would look at that like, I'm going to ask this guy for money. I'm never going to tell him I'm not good with money. Please tell me you're not good with money, because like if you're not, like I can help you, because like that's the thing. And then that's where you can kind of see synergies. And like, okay, dude, I can't sell your garage magic wands, but I can run books and my team can run books and I can help you with KPIs. I can do stuff. So all of a sudden, I now trust this guy or girl a lot more because they were willing to be honest. More than that, so I know they've got integrity. We've cut through 6 months of emotional bullshit of like me trying to protect it, whatever. And it's like, dude, you suck at finance? Cool. Let's fucking nail that for you so you don't have to worry about it and you go and just do those pieces.
As a venture capitalist and or angel investor, what's the differentiation and how do you operate?
Great question. I do both. So like we, in Lexington, we've got a chapter called the Bluegrass Angels, right? So it's angel investors, and we've got a bunch of, people that are retired in business, entrepreneurs kind of going through, and they've got, monthly meetings and like it's a little Shark Tanky. And, we've thrown, hundreds of thousands of dollars at it, but these are like super, super early stage, like $10 million, $5 to $10 million, valuation ranges. But they're all small checks. And we get some good insight in going through, but, the funds return, but it's more of like a giving back piece, and it's very passive and like, hey, it happens out. Sometimes we'll take a board seat, but it's just, it's small incubated things, and it's just kind of more of a give back service. And then, yeah, you get lucky, but we're not, angel investing in Lexington, Kentucky is way different than angel investing in Silicon Valley, right? You're not, very rarely you're going to get a 1,000Xer. VC, what I do, and it's Delk Enterprises, and I call it strategic capital. So we will write checks, and we write checks all the time. But most of the time, it's still very early stage. We like to come in and really help. So we'll usually buy 100% of the company and give back some equity to the founder, or 51%, and try to have some control, because every single time I've seen an investment deck, like it's about the number. I need this much money at this price. Some of these valuations, since like Shark Tank and all these other things, just fucking bananas. Everyone's got $1 billion business, which is kind of asinine. But
and it makes for good TV.
It does, great TV. But so what I tend to do is dig deeper, and actually it's a better win for everyone. So like, Patrick, you're trying to raise $2 million at a $20 million pre. So you're offering me 10% of the business for $2 million, and then you got to use the proceeds. You're going to take that 2 million and do something with it. Hire a marketing director, CFO, legal, whatever the thing is. I've got enough businesses and enough experience and a big enough team that I, as opposed to like beating people up where they feel bad about valuations, which I'm very good at, but it's not a pleasant. If you're going to do business with someone, you don't want to beat the hell out of them, right? You don't want to go through. So what I often do is like, okay, here's your use of proceeds. I'll do that deal, but I'll just give you the result. So if I can get it done if it takes 2 million, that's great. But if I can get it done for less, it's beneficial to me because I'm getting a better rate on my valuation dollars. But it's also better for you because I'm going to write you a check for 2 million. Then you have to go and do it. I have the team that I can go through like with shared services and do the marketing, do the legal, do all these pieces that amplify the business, because it's not like, oh, let's try this out. Let's hire this person to kind of go through and see. So it speeds up their roadmap a bit and gives them more velocity with time. And I get a better deal, and they're happy because they got the results without getting the haircut on the valuation.
Are you, in a VC kind of world? Do you like to play in a specific industry? Is there a kind of a specialty that you have, or do you look at all kind of deals that make sense?
Industry agnostic. I mean, now I'm at a point in my life, like it has to be cool. I like it. And it's fun. Like the coaching stuff has actually been a lot of fun for me because it's allowed me to get a lot of deal flow, and not every. So don't sign up to me to get coached and think I'm going to buy or invest in your business. But it's a great way to start, right? Because I can help maybe go through, and then I've done some consulting for equity. I've done some things, but it's a great way for both people to date before you kind of get married,
Yeah. So when you're, that's an interesting model, and I think it's kind of cool. But when you're looking at a particular deal, I mean, numbers aside, and certainly you look at the viability of a certain project. Are you generally looking at new ideas, as in, there's certain way, like, okay, well, I've got a car wash, I want to do a car wash, and I've got this plan for this car wash, and it's like, 37 bays, and it's self-wanted, whatever the story is. I
Hmm.
mean, those are a lot of them out there, kind of thing.
Hmm.
What, if you're looking at that, are you looking for something, or are you looking for something, hey, listen, I've got this car wash, it's totally new, and don't know if it's going to work, but it's got these special wands. I don't know what the story is, I'm just
Yeah,
making shit
but
up.
yeah, more geared the special wand route. I'm not
Okay.
going to help you. Like, I mean, I do real estate, I do things, but like, if you got a business that you've doing X amount and you want to grow by 10%, not your guy, right? I'm like very much the 0 to 1 type of guy, and even in my practice, like out out here, I've got we just bought another company, and I bought the company for management, right? Because like I know for a fact out of history, I'll fucking break it, right? I'll get bored and try to mess with it. So like I can take revenue to sin, but once it gets to $10 or $20 million in revenue, I usually stay on the board and step away and then put adults in to manage because like that's scaling. Not to say that's not there's a skill set to do it, but it's much easier to that's just operator, right? It's way harder to build a new market in a new space, but that's
Yeah.
the fun. I love that part of it. So
Mhm.
I gear towards now. The problem with that, and that's why it's venture, more of these garage or to use your analogy, these car washes with magic wands, most of those fucking don't work, right?
Mhm.
But when they do, they
Yeah.
pay for the other 10 regular car washes that didn't work.
Okay, so that's how you view a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Now, so I mean, you're getting deals pitched to you, just from a listener point of view, going, oh gosh, like, I would like to, I need to raise some capital for a project. So, not that they would reach out to you. It's more, the question is, what are some of the things that you look for? I mean, the math is the math. The business plan is the business plan. But how much are you paying attention to who the person is on the other side of it? Now, you're suggesting that, your preference would be, I'll buy you, I'll give you some equity later, or however you want to structure it. But ultimately, you're taking it over. So you're not at the effect of maybe a potential business partner that doesn't align, or maybe doesn't have the skills. How much of that part of it plays into your decision making, so that if somebody's listening to this and pitching a deal, what would if you got one, two, three, five things that, listen, here's what you need to pay attention to, and here's how I want to hear it.
Yeah. Love this question. Um, so all your listeners that call me, do these things and you'll get much further. So I said I'm in Lexington, Kentucky. So we got some racehorses here. So you've heard the whole analogy of you bet on horses or jockeys. We're all jockeys, baby.
Ah.
And so I would say 95% of
Yeah.
it is the founder. Um,
Mm.
and when I buy a business, like very rarely would I buy it just to take it over. I would buy it, but give them founders still a massive amount of equity to kind of
Yeah.
go through and structure because like they're the operator, the visionary. But it's all the person. The ideas are cheap, right? I got
Dime a
all kinds of
dozen.
ideas, but
Yeah.
they're cheap as chips. Um, so that's number one. So it's all on them. The biggest tip I can tell you, and then the second rule for me is I it's not a requisite, but I like to invest in a founder that's been through a cycle, right?
Mm.
Whether they've lost the business, they went bankrupt, or they've had struggle. They like, you know, the shiny bright kid that's out there, like they just you don't have enough, you know, scars and scar tissue to kind of to go through it. So I really do favor people that have went through a cycle. But the biggest piece is um, being honest. I think the biggest mistake that I see are these founders that come in and have it all figured out. They have every answer.
Mm.
You and I know. I've been doing this for 25. I don't fucking have it all figured out myself, and I've arguably more experience than a lot of the people who are pitching me. But I know, I'm honest with myself. I don't know what this is or that is. And when they start going through and saying, "Oh, I got this answer, I got that answer," not only is it's either they're lying and they're disingenuine, right? And they're just kind of going through, or they don't know enough to kind of answer, and they don't know what they don't know. Either way, I'm not investing them. But
Mm.
the now back that up, like, well, why would I be vulnerable? Because if you're vulnerable and being honest, Um, that's a huge thing because like now you're telling me like, hey, like say Patrick, you're pitching me a business like Jeremy, I'm the best salesman ever. I can't balance my checkbook to save my life. Like most people trying to raise money would look at that like I'm going to ask this guy for money. I'm never going to tell him I'm not good with money. Please tell me
Hmm.
you're not good with money because like if you're
Yeah.
not, like I can help you because like that's the thing. And then that's where you can kind of see synergies and like, okay, dude, I can't sell your garage magic wands, but I can run books and my team can run books and I can help you with KPIs. I can do stuff. So all of a sudden, I now trust this guy or girl a lot more because they were willing to be honest. More than that, so I know they've got integrity. More than that, we've cut through 6 months of emotional bullshit of like me trying to protect it, whatever. And it's like, dude, you suck at finance? Cool, let's fucking like nail that for you so you don't have to worry about it and you go and just do those pieces. So being vulnerable and just being honest, like, hey, I don't have this figured out. Now you can't go to an investor meeting and not have any answers, but
Yeah.
knowing what your zone of genius is and then saying that's what I do really, really well and having the courage to say what you don't do well and what you really need beyond money, that's
Hmm.
where guys like me and everyone else in the space get excited because like, wow, there you go. Now I know what you need. We're being honest because you have
Hmm.
to be.
So it's an interesting point that you make, and I sit on or I'm a chair in a CEO peer to peer program, which is it's not a coaching program. I'm a chair. I facilitate conversations between a small group of CEOs that are sitting down to in non-competing businesses that sit down, get together half a dozen times a year, bring a problem to the group, and then tap into the I guess the collective intelligence of that group with the challenge I got, the issue I got, all of the things that happen at that level. But there's a fundamental breakdown, which is the question is that even as a CEO, there's a lot of expectations of you as a CEO, but as well, CEOs have a tendency to put a lot of expectations on themselves. I think the kind of the wise, if it's experienced, is for a CEO to go, I'm the CEO, but I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And then I need to make sure that I'm surrounding myself and filling the gap of what I'm not good at, not interested in, don't get lit up about, whatever the story is. And when what I'm hearing you is that you're okay with that side of, as a matter of fact, you want to hear that side of the equation. That's really what I'm hearing. So that you come in as the VC and say, okay, I got team. Here's what I got to fill. Okay, let him drive this pointy end of the spear over here, and I'll fill in behind to do what we need to do in terms of execution of the plan. Is that a
That's
relatively
100%. Yeah, and like not to say I won't invest in someone that
yeah,
isn't vulnerable and isn't saying comes in with hasn't been through a cycle and doesn't know what they don't know. Not say I'm sure I have invested in that in the past, but nowadays it's 99% of the deals are as the former. What I just kind of said to you. The other piece too, from a mistake standpoint, like after funding, what have you, that you kind of touched on with the CEO role, is there's so many of these solopreneurs, and everyone has said this. Like I'll just do it myself, Pat. Like you can't. It's going to take me more work to show you how to do it than doing it. That's a
yeah.
great way to make thousands of dollars. If you want to be a thousandaire, like you
You want to
can't.
be a thousandaire.
Yeah, you want to be a thousandaire. That's a great model. But like make a hire before you think you need to make a hire, right? That's like the biggest thing. But then this is where like giving you some fuel to like, what do I need? Lay out what the fuck you like to do and what you don't like to do. And then in that don't like to do, there's probably going to be a don't like to do and not good at. Well, those are the things that first to go, right? Why
Yeah.
why do something you don't like and then more on top of that you suck at it, dude. Next, free yourself up and go do more.
Yeah, put your time in what you're good at. I mean, we often, I think, are raised in, there's that common phrase, work on your weaknesses. And not everybody has turned that around, but the real turnaround is no, don't work on your weaknesses, work on your strengths, make your strengths stronger, kick your weaknesses to the curb and get them handled by somebody who actually has that strength.